Picture the average week for a person trying to get their life together in 2025. On Tuesday morning, they are at the gym, headphones on, lifting weights to fix their posture and burn off stress. That's the body. Then, maybe Wednesday evening, they sit on a cushion with an app telling them to breathe in and breathe out, trying to silence the noise in their head. That's the mind. And then, perhaps on Sunday, they're in a pew or kneeling by their bed, looking for something bigger than themselves. That's the soul. We treat these three things, the gym, the meditation app, and the prayer book, as if they are completely separate departments of our existence. You go to the doctor for the body, the therapist for the mind, and the priest for the soul. But what if that fragmentation is actually the reason we feel so burnout? What if true wellness isn't a checklist, but a triad, where if one leg wobbles, the whole table falls over?
I'm Noah, and this is The Deep Dive. Today we are looking at the oldest technology we have, ourselves, and asking how the mechanics of prayer, exercise, and meditation actually overlap. To help me untangle the neuroscience from the spirituality, I'm joined by Eloise, a specialist in integrative physiology. Eloise, welcome.
It is a pleasure to be here, Noah. And you are right about the fragmentation. We have become very efficient at compartmentalizing our health. We treat the body like a machine we need to maintain, the mind like a computer we need to debug, and the soul, if we acknowledge it at all, as this vague optional accessory.
Right, it's the aftermarket part you add if you have time. But the premise we're looking at today suggests that's biologically impossible, that you can't actually separate them.
Biologically, it is impossible. The brain doesn't have a firewall between spiritual experiences and physical sensations. It's all running on the same hardware. If you look at the research coming out of places like UCLA or the Marcus Institute of Integrative Health, the boundaries we have drawn are culturally constructed, not physiologically real.
Let's start with the body then, because I think that's the one people feel they understand best. You lift the heavy thing, you run the mile, your heart gets stronger. We know about endorphins. We've known about the runner's high since the jogging boom of the 70s. Is there really anything new to say about exercise and mental health?
There is, and it completely changes how we should view a workout. For decades, we thought the mental benefit of exercise was mostly about blood flow or those endorphins you mentioned. But recently, scientists have identified something called myokines. These are small proteins, peptides specifically, that are released by your muscle fibers when they contract.
Released into the blood.
Into the bloodstream, yes. But here's the trick. They travel up to the brain and cross the blood-brain barrier. Some researchers are now calling them hope molecules. These myokines act as a mild antidepressant. They increase our resilience to stress and trauma. So when you are doing a squat or going for a run, you aren't just building a quad muscle. You are literally synthesizing a chemical that makes the world feel less hopeless.
Hold on. Hope molecules? That sounds like marketing copy, not science.
It does, doesn't it? But the data backs it up. A study from UCLA indicated that individuals who exercise regularly experience a 40% decrease in poor mental health days per month compared to those who don't. That is not a marginal gain, and it's driven by this chemical conversation between muscle and brain. It redefines exercise from vanity to pharmacy. You are essentially prescribing yourself resilience every time you move.
That changes the motivation completely. It's not, I need to look better for summer, it's, I need to manufacture some hope for Tuesday. But this leads me to the second leg of the stool. If the body is pumping out these chemicals to prime the brain, what is the role of meditation? Because in the popular imagination, meditation is just doing nothing. It's sitting still. How is that active work?
If exercise is the accelerator that generates energy and resilience, meditation is the brake system that stops the engine from overheating. And we have a very specific name for the overheating in neuroscience. It's called the default mode network, or DMN.
The default mode network. I've heard this term thrown around in productivity circles. What is it actually doing?
Think of the DMN as your brain's time travel machine. It is the network of brain regions that lights up when you aren't focused on a specific task. It's what allows you to ruminate on that embarrassing thing you said 5 years ago, or worry about the meeting you have next week. It is the seat of mind wandering. And research shows a strong correlation between an overactive DMN and unhappiness. A wandering mind is, statistically, an unhappy mind.
So when we say we are lost in thought, we are trapped in the DMN?
Precisely. Now, meditation, specifically mindfulness meditation, deactivates this network. Studies on long-term meditators show that they can switch off this me center much more efficiently than the rest of us. They have stronger structural coupling between the control centers of the brain and the DMN. They can stop the time travel and come back to the present.
Okay, but I have to push back here. You see this everywhere now. Corporate mindfulness seminars, breathing apps for CEOs. It feels like we've stripped the spiritual context out of meditation to make it a productivity hack. Is there a difference between mindfulness as a brain exercise and what the monks were doing?
That is a valid critique. In a clinical setting, we often treat meditation as attention training. It's mental push-ups. But historically, in the Buddhist or Hindu traditions, that attention was meant to lead to insight, to a realization about the nature of the self. However, even if you strip the theology away, the physiological mechanism is robust. You are quieting the noise. You are lowering cortisol. You are preparing the vessel.
Preparing it for what?
Well, in the triad we are discussing, you prepare it for the third element. You exercise to build the chemical resilience. You meditate to quiet the chaotic internal monologue. And that creates the silence necessary for the third act, prayer.
This is where I struggle, and I think a lot of listeners might too. We can look at an MRI of a meditator and say, look, the DMN is quiet. But prayer, isn't prayer just meditation with a religious flavor? Is there actually a neurological difference between meditating on your breath and praying to God?
This is the most fascinating part of the new research in neurotheology. The answer is yes, they are distinct. Dr. Andrew Newberg has done extensive SPECT scans of nuns in prayer and Buddhist monks in meditation. While both practices increase activity in the frontal lobes, the focus areas, prayer does something else. It activates the regions of the brain associated with social relationship and language.
Social relationship? So the brain thinks it's talking to another person?
Exactly. Meditation is often inward-facing or sensation-based. It's about being. Prayer is relational. It involves theory of mind, the cognitive ability to attribute mental states to others. When you pray, your brain is simulating a conversation with a divine other. You aren't just observing your thoughts, you are communicating them. That activates the inferior parietal lobe in a way that silent, breath-focused meditation usually doesn't.
That implies that the psychological benefit of prayer is different, too. If meditation is about focus, what is prayer about? Connection?
Connection, but also surrender. This is key. In Newberg's studies, he found that during intense spiritual experiences, like speaking in tongues or deep contemplative prayer, there is actually a decrease in activity in the frontal lobes. That's the area of the brain involved in willpower and control. The person feels like they are letting go and being led by something else. Meditation often increases that control. Prayer, at its peak, asks you to relinquish it.
That is a massive distinction. One is training the self to focus, the other is training the self to trust. I can see why you'd need both. If you only have control, you become rigid. If you only have surrender,
You might become unmoored. You need the strength of the ego, which meditation and exercise help build, to have something valuable to surrender in prayer. It's a paradox.
Let's look at the historical side of this for a moment. We talked about how modern life fragments these three. Did we ever have a time where they were integrated? Or is that just a romanticized view of the past?
It's not just romanticism. The ancient Greeks had the concept of ascesis. Today, we hear asceticism and think of monks starving themselves in the desert. But originally, ascesis meant training or exercise, specifically for athletes. It was physical.
So the word for spiritual discipline started as a gym term?
It did, and early Christian thinkers adopted it. They saw the discipline of the body and the discipline of the spirit as parallel tracks. St. Paul even writes in his letters, "Physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things." He wasn't dismissing the physical. He was acknowledging it as a foundation that points to something higher. The monastery was, in a way, a gymnasium for the soul. They worked physically in the gardens, they meditated on scripture, and they prayed. It was a complete ecosystem.
And now we have Planet Fitness, the Headspace app, and Sunday Service, usually in 3 different zip codes.
And usually with 3 different goals. We exercise for vanity, we meditate for productivity, we pray for emergencies. We have stripped the wellness out of them and turned them into transactional utilities.
I want to circle back to the why.
Why does this specific combination, mind, body, soul, matter for someone listening right now who isn't a monk or a nun? Let's say I'm just a guy dealing with high stress and a bad back. Why do I need to integrate them?
Because they potentiate each other. They create a virtuous cycle. Think about it. If your body is inflamed and weak, your cortisol is high. It is biologically very difficult to sit still and meditate when your body is screaming at you. So exercise quiets the body.
Okay, so the run makes the meditation possible.
Right. Then, if your mind is racing with anxiety, the time travel machine of the DMN is stuck in the future. You can't effectively pray. You can't feel that sense of connection or gratitude if you are mentally writing your grocery list. So, meditation clears the noise. It focuses the attention so that when you do turn to prayer, you are actually present for it.
And what does prayer do for the other two? Because I can hear the secular listener saying, I'm good with just the first two, thanks.
That is the million-dollar question. Exercise and meditation are largely self-referential. I improve my body. I calm my mind. Prayer flips the orientation outward. It connects you to a purpose beyond the self. Research on resilience, specifically from the American Psychological Association, shows that social support and sense of meaning are the strongest buffers against stress. Prayer provides that sense of being known and held. If you only have the first two, you have a high function in self, but you might still be lonely or lack purpose. Prayer anchors the wellness in something durable.
It prevents it from just being narcissism.
Harsh, but yes, it moves us from self-optimization to stewardship. You take care of the body not because you are obsessed with your abs, but because it's the vessel you were given to do good work. You clear your mind not just to be more productive at the office, but to be present for the people you love.
Stewardship. That's a word we don't hear enough in the wellness industry. It implies that this health isn't fully yours to hoard.
It changes the pressure too. If I am just optimizing myself, every missed workout is a failure of my will. But if I am stewarding a gift, I can have grace for myself. I can rest. The hope molecules from the exercise give me the biological lift. The meditation gives me the clarity to see my own limitations, and the prayer gives me the grace to accept them. It's a complete system.
I'm struck by how much scientific validation there is for these ancient practices. We spent the last century secularizing everything, trying to find the active ingredient in religion so we could bottle it as a pill or an app. But it turns out the active ingredient might be the integration itself.
We are uncovering what our ancestors intuitively knew. A study involving 40,000 children in the U.S. showed that screen time, which is essentially the opposite of this triad, being sedentary, distracted, and isolated, was associated with lower psychological well-being. We are wired for movement, for stillness, and for connection. When we ignore that design, we suffer.
So, practically speaking, what does this look like for a modern person? We can't all move to a monastery. How do we reintegrate these things without it becoming just 3 more things on the to-do list?
Start small and try to stack them. You don't need a separate hour for each. Maybe your morning walk is where you practice gratitude. You are moving, releasing those myokines, and you are directing your mind outward in prayer. Or maybe before you lift weights, you take 2 minutes of silence to visualize your intention and quiet the DMN. It's about weaving them back together.
I like the idea of stacking. It makes it feel less like a chore chart. It reminds me of that saying, move the body to still the mind. It's all one process.
And remember, perfection isn't the goal. The goal is connection. If you miss a day, you haven't failed. You just pick up the stewardship again the next day. The body is forgiving. The mind is plastic. It can change. And the soul, well, the soul is always waiting.
The soul is always waiting. I think that's a perfect place to land. We've talked about hope molecules, the time-traveling brain, and the neurobiology of surrender. It turns out, being a whole human requires the whole triad. Eloise, thank you for connecting the dots for us.
Thank you, Noah. It is always good to remember that we are more than the sum of our parts.
And for everyone listening, maybe tomorrow, don't just go to the gym to burn calories. Go to manufacture some hope. Don't just close your eyes to escape, close them to tune in. Mind, body, soul. It's not just a slogan, it's the blueprint. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.